just get this on here. Hello, this is Carol Dimitrov, and we are here today with Sol Jonassen, and she is going to be talking about healing Mars, the art of fighting or the pain of conflict. With Mars retrograde in Chiron into Aries in the course of 2018, it is important to focus on how to regulate Mars and our instinctive nature. In the area of human interaction, we often experience our most vulnerable selves. Mars can be particularly challenging when we socialize. We can be hyperstimulated and have our adrenals go into fight mode or feel depleted by stress. In this lecture, we will look at the upcoming Mars transit, retrograde, and its different modes of expression. And a little bit about Sol. Sol was born into a family of astrology and has first learned the art through her Aries father as a teenager. She took her studies further, studying with Alan Oken, Noel Tyl, and Maurice Fernandez, among many others. Sol started working as an astrologer in 1999 and has since given lectures around the world for Norwac, River of Stars, EA, Astrological Association of England, and OPA. She is a licensed soul flow therapist, a trained meditation instructor, and a licensed energy healer. She combines all of these into her work when needed. Sol teaches online, maintains a YouTube channel, is an OPA representative for Norway, which she does an amazing job for us, so thank you, Sol, and is part of the new Paradigm Astrology Dream Team. She also writes for Cosmic Intelligence Agency and hosts the annual astrology conference Polaris in Oslo. She has a thriving practice in a beautiful city of Bergen and works with clients all over the world through Skype. And you can find out more about Sol through her website, and that is www.sol-with.com. And Sol, it's all yours. Please go ahead, and we look forward to this presentation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Carol. And yes, as some of you who came to see the live show, it was abruptly ending because of some Mars in Aquarius action. So we got to a little feel of that Mars on the South Node. So this is now being recorded for the second time. I was unknowingly presenting my lecture without knowing I was shut off or like disconnected. So here we go again. So Mars retrograde is indeed, you know, we have an exciting summer ahead of us, a little bit too exciting for some people, maybe. But it is a summer of and a fall of rediscovering and finding and setting free that part which we can call your true self. But before we get that far, we will go deep into the little building blocks of this particular transit that we call Mars retrograde. And we will look a little bit what that means, both for you individually and collectively. Yes, so without further ado, I will just get started, and hopefully I'll manage to get through all of this in just 1 hour. I realized when I ran through it the other time, yeah, there's material here to cover a book, I'm sure. And being a Martian myself, this is what I like to call myself, it has been a very interesting time for me, life in general, but particularly this last couple of weeks after Chiron entered Aries. I'm born with Chiron in Aries, I'm born with Sun square Mars, and I'm a woman. So it's been quite a challenging aspect for me, actually. I'm quite happy about it, but at the same time, some of these issues that I'm almost certain Mars retrograde in Aquarius will touch upon are also issues that touch very close to home for me. Right before this weekend, something very intense happened too that made me think a little bit deeper about Mars retrograde. And it was a very dear friend of mine who had some relationship issues that came out of the blue like a lightning bolt and disrupted a lot of her personal life. So it was from one day to the other, she lost everything. She lost her lover, she lost her boyfriend, because she lost an illusion, she lost something she thought was real. And she's now, without knowing it, came like, it came like a lightning bolt. She's now single again. And she has a reverse nodal return, and with Mars exactly on that spot right now. So it was kind of like a little, almost like I had to witness this in front of me. And it brought up so many things inside of me that I thought was important to bring into this lecture. Not just because of the suddenness, but also because of the impulsive actions that happened. It could have been planned much better, but it wasn't. And that's human nature, to just run into things by mere impulse. And it is exactly that impulsive action that is Mars. Oh, I think I'm going to do that now because it feels right, right? And it hurts other people. So there's a lot of action with Mars that are not always well thought through. So let's go deeper into it. What is Mars? Mars is the principle of action. It is that part of the nervous system that is driving the body into action. So it's connected to the adrenals. It's connected to our fight and flight response mechanisms. And once we get into action, we get things done, right? But the way that we get into action is not always conscious. People stimulate us in different ways. And we see this energy that we have on Earth today is that we are more likely to run into war than we are to achieving peace. You know, the conflicts between people are happening all the time. And that's why I think Mars is part of the great problem for humanity. It is separating, it is splitting up, it is divorcing, it is changing. And sometimes these changes are good. We need change in our lives because we're always evolving. But other times, change can be very disruptive. It can create, due to lack of forethought or planning, a lot of chaos and destruction in our own lives. And I've been, some of you might know that I've been, I read a little bit of esoterics in the words of Alice Bailey, actually. I've been very interested in her cosmology. It is a very interesting source of knowledge for those of you who wants to know what is the soul, for instance. How does astrology work? And there is a little section there on what they call sacred and non-sacred planets. Now, in these particular texts, she mentions that a sacred planet is one planetary principle and archetype that has gone through certain initiations, certain transcendent initiations. It's lifted. You know, we are lifting, ascension. Whereas Mars is one of the non-sacred planets. It's a non-sacred planetary principle. And that means it has not gone through the initiations. Now, when initiation is an awakening to a bigger world, that's when you see that you're not alone on this planet. You can't just go around and do whatever you want all the time, even if you want to do that. But you have to take into consideration that you're one of 7 billion people. And if you just go around and do everything the way that you want to do them, you might actually hurt other people. It might be right for you, but it can be very hurtful for others. And then in the long run, that's not right for you. Because if you look at it spiritually, if you hurt somebody, you hurt yourself. Now, it's a very difficult and complicated situation, that one, because that's exactly where I see human problems lie a lot these days. So I don't want to hurt anyone. I end up doing nothing. We have to redefine what hurt is. Saying no to another person is not hurting that person, even though if you might disappoint them a little bit, because they're not getting what they want. So it's always about doing the right thing, right, correct action, and figuring out what is that, right? Because that's not always obvious. Mars is that principle which protects the self. It's actually, if you look into the cellular levels of any human being, you will find that each cell has a self-protective mechanism. We call it the immune system. The blood. Mars is associated to blood, and together with Neptune, they form what I think that they form the immune system. A lot of autoimmune illnesses you see with Mars, inflammations, Neptune problems. But the cell itself is designed to protect itself from danger, from attacks. It has a wall around it. It's the membrane. Just a little bit like an armor. The armor we put on us when we go into war so that we won't get hurt. That's the Martian principle. That's the function of Mars, to protect that which is under attack. And believe me, we're under attack all the time. Not like dangerous attacks, but we always have to be aware what's coming in. Right, there's a car coming across the street. I have to be aware. I have to be awake. I have to be present. The problem with stress, the problem with being too engaged or too stimulated, is that we are not paying attention. Things just happen. And then there's all these underlying defense mechanism that we have due to that protective mechanism that is Mars. It's like, what did you mean about that? I didn't say that. Come on. Like we run into, very easily, we say things before we think.
So
we want to win something. Yeah?
I have a quick question for you. Are you changing your slides?
Yes, I am, but not right now.
Oh, okay, because I haven't seen this slide change, and I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a problem on my end.
There should be a new slide here called Mars.
I'm not seeing that.
You're not seeing?
Just your initial Mars retrograde slide is up. So I'm wondering if you have 2 PowerPoint programs running.
Okay. Shall we just start over again?
Well, no, you could just maybe pull up the other program on the bottom and see if that's, or move the slide. Yes.
I don't know what you're talking about now.
There we go. Now it's moved.
Oh, what? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny. Now you can see this overview, right?
Yes. Yes, there you go. Perfect. Thank you.
I'll just keep it here then. Okay, so Mars is that principle of action. And now where were we? This is very Mars in Aquarius, I have to say. Like suddenly, which is also part of the Mars problem, is like we're constantly being interrupted by everything because of other people's actions or something weird that happens, like these technical things as well. You know, there's always something happening around us. Now, sometimes that can stress us out, like we're aware of what happens around us, and we get into this fight and flight mode. What's happening? Stress, you know, it gets stressed out a little bit, and just a situation like we had now with the slides and everything, it can actually stress out, so you get erupted, and then what was I doing? It's a very interesting, visualization of exactly what happens with Mars, is that we tend to lose it a little bit with Mars. We get lost in that stress. In yoga, we say that it takes about 24 hours before the body gets balanced again after being stressed out. And due to the hormonal changes in the blood, it takes that much time for the blood to digest the hormones. I don't know if that is true. That's what my yoga teacher says, so I'm going to believe her, right? But it is true that the tension we feel sometimes, it takes a little time before we manages to relax again, which is the opposite principle of Mars, Venus. And this summer, we will see Mars and Venus making a lot of interesting aspects. And when I looked up the overview of 2018, I thought, yeah, Chiron is going into Aries. Mars will go retrograde in Aquarius, Venus will go retrograde in Scorpio, and Uranus will go from Aries, a Mars sign, into Taurus, a Venus sign, and back again to Aries, a Mars sign. There's a lot of Mars Venus action going on this year, and Uranus in Taurus will be part of the whole dance, the planetary sauce that we're going into. It's also, the ruler of Aquarius, where Mars will stay for the most part of its retrograde motion and where it is right now. So we're looking at some interesting movements in the heavens that is very much related to our relationship to other people, because Mars Venus rules that particular area. Me, you, me, us. Independence, cooperation, that balance. Action, what is up to me. Reaction or cooperation, what is up to others. Mars Venus. Venus is also a very strong principle of harmony, harmonizing everything again. When you're out of touch with your Venusian principles, you can easily get into a burnout situation. Mars rules the adrenals, so it's up and about and runs around fixing and changing things. But if you do that all the time, you cannot gear down again and relax and have the body build itself up again. So with Mars, we see a lot of burnout syndromes. With Mars, there can be a lot of fatigue, actually. That's the dark side of Mars, when you've been running and running and running and running, and we live on this very competitive Earth where we are running all the time, and there's no time for anything. Time, which is a resource that we seem to be lacking these days, because we have to fit everything, both individualizing and both relaxing and having a great, private arena for play and recuperation. But sometimes I say to people when they come for a healing or a massage or something, and they say, well, I really don't have time. Then I say, well, maybe it's better you don't do it and just go home and relax and enjoy the time. Don't run to the massage and then run away again afterwards, because it's not going to give you any effect. But people who have a real burnout syndrome cannot relax. They keep running even when they sleep. That's why they wake up and they're tired. The body is not picking itself up again. The body is not healing itself, because the adrenals are going and going and going. The nervous system is going and going and going. The brain is going and going and going. So, with Mars being so strong this particular time, especially in the sign of Aquarius, which rules the nervous system, we can probably see there's going to be some high strung energies up and about. There's going to be a lot of mental activity. People will think a lot this summer, and it might affect your sleep patterns. It might affect your routines. It could be a little chaotic, swift changes back and forth, like ding ding, indecisiveness, problems with relaxing. Mars on the node is very highly activated. It is a very highly activated position for Mars when it's touching the nodal axis. Anything that touches the nodal axis is being pulled firmly into Earth. The nodal axis is that ecliptic and the lunar orb that crosses into each other and creates a powerful magnetic field that pulls the energy into the atmosphere of the Earth. So the dominating principle of the time where there's an eclipse or Mars is on the nodal axis, is that planetary principle which touches the nodal axis. So it's not, because Mars is not a sacred principle, we fear Mars transits. We can fear them easily. I remember, it's easy to fear astrology. It's like, oh, I can't travel at that time because Mars is retrograde on the nodal axis. And I'm laughing a little bit, but I'm there too, like, ooh, is that a good time to travel? Will the plane just fall out of the sky? It's always easy to think worst case scenario, because we're human beings and we have a lot of memories, right? We remember the time we lost the bus or we were humiliated, so we remember everything, and that's the problem. If we hadn't remembered anything, I guess we would just walk into the wilderness without paying attention. So we have to pay attention too, but we cannot get too scared, because then we're going to think we cannot do anything with life. The principle of action, our will to be, will be thwarted. And having a will means taking responsibility. It means that I wanted this, so I cannot really blame anyone else for what happened. I said yes, didn't I? Yeah, we have a very strong tendency to say yes to things because we get inspired or enthusiased, or we get into our desires in one way or another, and then we realize this wasn't so smart, and then we can't get out of it again. I normally say it takes 3 weeks to get together with somebody and 13 years to divorce them. So take a little time, right? Take a little time, relax. And with Mars retrograde, I think exactly what we're going to do. We're going to think twice. Now, the protection of the self and the ego is very important. The problem with it is exactly defensiveness. Like we attack before we don't listen enough. We attack before we get a chance to sort of feel in what is this about. If there's guilt issues, we're going to be extremely, tense and be very, very defensive. So anything, we can learn about this principle of action through Mars, if we can learn to sit through those bodily emotions, because it's very much instinctual. Mars is connected to the reptile brain. It's connected to the solar plexus very much. That's just me, like the theories of the chakras and the energy systems, they vary a great deal. Some say the root because it's all about survival. And yes, the adrenals are connected to the root, but we feel it very much in our tummy. We feel it in the lower back. Oh, stress, tired, fatigue. We feel it in our kidney areas. We feel it in our brains. Like when the brain is swimming in stress, we cannot think clearly. We make poor action. We make poor choices. So stress problems, stress in any form will definitely be part of this transit. How do you deal with it? How do you set boundaries for yourself? How do we create what we call disciplined action, conscious disciplined action? If we are overreacting all the time to what is happening, making a big drama out of nothing, we cannot ever have that. We have to be in that reaction and move beyond it, and then we can decide for something, right? Mars is also related to our libido. It's that powerful chemical substance that brings people together. For better and worse. There's a lot of people who stay in bad relationship because that particular part works well, right? And there's a lot of people who stay in relationship because and that part doesn't work well. So whichever it is, there will be a certain focus around your sexuality with this particular transit, because anything related to Mars has also to do with your sexual energy in the world. We don't talk so much about sex, but it's very much a part of the motivating force behind a lot of things. Somebody said, I don't know who it was, like sex and money and power is what motivates people. You might think that humanity is a little shallow, but when you think about it, the reproduction in itself is what drives humanity forward. It's just a human instinct. And when you are low in energy, if your energy is low, your libido will be low. If you are depressed, your libido will be low, and you will feel that you miss something. We can also have other things that can contain the libido, and that's, for instance, shame and guilt. Mars will go all the way back into Capricorn and will re-examine some of these conditioned patterns that is Capricorn. And that has a lot to do with how we are bred in the world today. That has a lot to do with who we have become due to social conditionings. But it does not mean that we necessarily will, have a lot of sexual frustrations during this particular period in time. It just means that we will have an exploration of these particular themes for better and worse. If it's problematic for you, if you have shame issues around these things, if you feel like, okay, you're in a relationship you shouldn't be in, or if you feel like you you can't get to the relationship you want to be in. A lot of these things, how you carry yourself in the world, how you live these energies, will have great effect on the people you attract and the partner you attract. It matters to have a rich and healthy life on all levels. It's life quality, and having a functional Mars is part of that life quality. So whenever Mars principle is accentuated, all these issues that we normally associate with Mars, protection, defense mechanism, competition, getting stronger, fighting, anger. It's difficult to be angry too on planet Earth, huh? And sexuality, libido, pure energy. These issues will be put into a highlighted position. If you don't have it, you're going to question why. Where is my energy going? How come I'm not channeling energy in an efficient and good way? And a lot of it boils down to a little bit of codependence. Like there's this problem we have, like we are a little bit codependent on each other. Do you think I should do that? Do you want me to do that? You know, so Mars is a principle of independence. It is pushing us forward into becoming more independent as human beings, which is a good thing. But if we're too independent and afraid to be dominated, we lose contact with the Venus principle again. It's all about finding that balance between these two opposites. And it's really difficult because they are really polar opposites. Venus rules the kidneys, right? The kidneys is about maintaining equilibrium in the body. How do you do that when you are trying to figure out how to work between the self and the others? Nothing is more disruptive than relationships. They can be, but why people get agitated, it's because something happened that came through another human being. You don't get, well, some people get agitated because there's a bird chirping around their house and it stresses them out. Like nature can sometimes agitate people too, but mostly it's people that agitate people. Politics agitate people. That's people creating politics. You know, there's always like some other disturbing element that comes in and disturbs the balance. And in Africa, they have a saying, I relate, therefore I am. Now, Mars is just posing a few problems in that particular area of being, the relationship. I relate, therefore I am. I am here because, you know, like if I was just talking to myself, well, I'd learned something maybe. So I'm still in a relationship to myself. But it is that ping pong between people that is actually, you know, the human development. I relate, therefore I am. And when we relate from a codependent core, like if there's like this codependency, we will eventually run into problems. We will eventually run into a little bit of situations where we feel we have to compromise our authenticity in order to survive, in order to not be abandoned. So I think collectively we are trying as a species, we're trying to figure out how can I be, I think they have a word for it, interdependent. Like how can I be, could we call it trans-dependent? Like, because we will still be dependent on each other. We need each other for growth. We need each other for making love. We need each other for making each other laugh. We just need each other. And today there's such a high focus on independence. Oh, I have to be super independent. I'm not going to need anyone. We have these big gender issues on planet Earth we've been trying to fix for a couple of thousands years that is really, you know, making us angry. We have all this injustice between the races, the sexes, everything. And I mentioned, you know, many times that I don't like the word feminism. Mars is relating to activism in general. We want nothing more of this, you know, that's Mars. No, no, no. trying to protect values. But feminism, I think, is a broken word. It's a ruined word. I'm sad to say, because I truly believe that the work that's been done, it's been great and tremendous and very important. I don't know where I'd be with all these feminists that has paved the road before me. I'm so grateful. And being a Martian woman, it's just dynamic and here I am. I also have that freedom of expression in my own country, even though it still is a little difficult. Still is like, I'm not what people expected a woman to be, right? Even in my society that is fairly modern. But I'm free, like I can do that. I can be free. And I'm not put in jail for my opinions or stuff like that. But I'd like to redefine feminism and call it human rights. It's a better way to approach the problems of inequality, because then you include everyone. Because we have so much inequality on Earth today. It's racial, it's monetary, it's social, it's cultural, it's religious, it's gender. We aren't the same. We are a bunch of individuals. Not all of us, of course, are individualized, but we are a bunch of unique human beings, and we are here. So all life is sacred. It's a very Aquarian principle, this human rights thing. But I just would like that to be the future concept of feminism. Human rights. It's about treating each other with dignity and respect. And that's what Mars is trying to protect. Don't abuse me. Don't exploit me. Don't take advantage of my kindness. I say no. And there is something with saying no that opens up for you to say yes as well, because then you know what you want, right? No, I don't want that, but yes, I want that. Codependency makes us a little like, oh, I don't know what I want. What do you think I want? Like we lose ourselves. And this is part of being in a relationship that a lot of people think is very difficult, is that we lose ourselves in the needs of the other. And we lose ourselves because of the temptation to please others. And then we have to regain ourselves by using Mars and go, no, I don't want this anymore. So you can see the ping pong between Venus and Mars principles. It's very active in our daily lives. It's very much happening every day. It's the personal planets. It matters for you personally. So it has a lot of personal effect, these particular transits. This is about your personal life to a great degree. And I'm very super Aquarian. I think that if we can fix one cell, that cell, like one individual, that individual will start relating in a healthy way to other people, and it would just be contagious. Eventually, none of us will take the bullshit that's going on. It's a quiet revolution. It's not like this, let's kill the people on the top. It's more, let's build this strength from the bottom and up. That's more the kind of revolution I can see happening. And it is happening, by the help of astrology and healers and, by exploring ourselves. Now, Mars-Venus, which is very active principle this year, is both part of what we call the sacred marriage, the inner harmony between the masculine and the feminine energies on the inner levels. Now, that leads me to one of these, let's see if I can get to these slides. A little difficult with this. Yes, this leads us to this wonderful quote that I found on Stephen Forrest's page about gender. And it actually made me cry. I'm a very sensitive Martian woman. Yeah, it made me cry because it was so beautiful. This is what I would love to have in life, freedom on both ends. Men, try to actively claim your Venusian energy. Buy flowers for the sheer joy of it. Cook candle-lit meals. Ask for help. Write a poem. Consult other people for their opinions. Tell your friends you love them. Be brave enough to be dependent on someone else and change your underpants. I think the revolution got very far in terms of changing the underpants, because I haven't seen no dirty underpants on men for a very long time. So that's at least where that's done, Stephen. However, there's a lot of things here. Ask for help. Tell your friends you love them. It's happening. It's really happening. Like, men are softening, showing their feminine side without being afraid of being judged as being a weak man, without being afraid of being taken advantage of, because then they show their inner woman, and that feminine energy has been taken advantage of for a very, very long time. The kindness and softness of the feminine understanding. Of course, the compassion, the understanding of the other. Women, you can help by actively claiming your Mars energies. Take some physical risks. Get sweaty. Go out on the streets looking what you really want to look like. Tell us exactly what you want. Be brave enough to cherish your independence, even if somebody wants to take care of you. Initiate sex. There are very many things there that are really going against what it means to be a woman today, you know, like what we expect women to be. Go out on the streets looking what you really look like. A lot of women tend to dress for others, not dress for themselves, right? Be yourself. That's what they say here. Initiate sex. Ooh, that's a, ooh, can I do that? What would the man think? Is that a little offensive? Am I emasculating him now? It's difficult, you know, being that brave new expression of the genders. But this is what we aim for when we go for the sacred inner marriage, that complicated task of becoming an androgynous, not an asexual being, but a person that is in contact with both parts of themselves. Now, that would be true independence, but there cannot be complete independence on Earth. We are group-oriented people. We need each other. I don't know everything. Even if I know what I know, I still depend on others to do what I don't know or to teach me what I don't know. So we will always create relationships to each other, even if we become so independent that we know we can live without that particular part, that other in our lives. Codependency, a symptom of codependency is that you lose your honesty because you're afraid to lose that person. It's when you lose yourself. When you lose yourself, you lose that person. You lose the self-respect. So it's very interesting how we get entangled into a relationship, and we go into these wars because we lose ourselves, and Mars starts to protect its very core, and like start criticizing, start distancing, creating gaps, making war. Because we did not stand in our own core. The masculine principle is out of balance. That's the masculine principle. Be in your core. There's no war. A new slogan. I just made that up, by the way. How interesting. Yeah. So Mars retrograde, the birth of the new Mars. This time Mars will go retrograde in Aquarius. Mars has a cycle of approximately 780 days between each retrograde. It's a very, if we look at the ecliptical orb of Mars, you can see it's a little bit elliptical. Like, it's not like these inner planets, Venus and Mercury, that is very steady. So you can see the steadiness of Venus. You've seen that flower of Venus, the synodic cycle of Venus is like a clockwork. It's harmony. Ding, ding, ding. It's like music. If you look at the retrograde movements of Mars, you won't see the same kind of harmonious pattern. It's highly erratic. It's here and there. It's not so often retrograde in, for instance, Aquarius is more often retrograde in another sign. So it's not that evenly distributed as you get with a perfect round cycle. You can almost set your watch according to the Venusian cycles. You cannot do the same with Mars. It's different, right? So, which I think is kind of cool, because Venus shows this incredible harmony. It's so beautiful. It's like beauty principle. You see it black on white. Look at these synodic cycles. They look like beauty. And and then comes the disruptive, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, Mars energy, and wreak havoc on everything. Not always though, but it's just like a simple, it's very sweet in a way. But the retrograde Mars in Aquarius is very, very rare. Mars is already in Aquarius. It happened at around 18th of May. It went into Aquarius. And then see if you can go back there and see if there was a change in tempo. Aquarius, which is the most heady of all signs. It's the one looking at itself. And one of the, Mars can be pretty immature. It's that part of you that says, I want what I want, and I want it now, right? So what happens when the most basic principle, the most egoistical urge comes into the sign, which is Capricorn and Aquarius, the transpersonal quadrant of the zodiac, the most mature part of the zodiac. It's like a paradox in itself. It's like the whole Mars principle is about to be matured. It will undergo a maturation process. So, what does that mean? What does it mean to have disciplined action? What is discipline? For one thing, it's wisdom, it's knowledge, it's experience, right? You have a certain experience, or I've done that before, I got burned. And believe me, I have Sun Mars square. I know what it means to get burned, right? Impulsive action. Oh, that seems like a good idea. And it wasn't, but yeah, it was kind of fun, but I could have lived without it, right? It seemed like a good idea at the time. Well, a lot of people says that and then end up doing something they regret doing, right? Well, we don't know until we know. So wisdom is something, wisdom is information plus experience. Then you have insight. Then oh yeah, now I can see this. So with the higher mind that is Aquarius, we can reach into the potential of looking into the details, into the matrix, and say, I don't think if that's a good idea. If I do A, B will happen, C will happen, and then D eventually will be the consequence of my action. I don't know if I want to go there. That's Mars in Aquarius. It's being aware of that longer, time span. If I start this, eventually maybe this will just stop at one point, right? Maybe I should just stop it now. Planned action, the mind above the instincts. Now there are certain, dark sides to that too. It's not necessarily just a good thing to be very planned. It can lead to a certain coldness, a certain distance. I had, just for the fun of it, a little overview over people who are born with Mars in Aquarius, not necessarily retrograde Mars in Aquarius, because they are hard to find due to the very, very exclusive time period in which Mars is retrograde in Aquarius. But we have certain individuals that come off as geniuses, like Leonardo da Vinci and Copernicus. Leonardo da Vinci, what a futurist, huh? He's such a Mars in Aquarius human being. And you have also people like David Deida. I don't know if you're aware of his work, but he's also Mars in Aquarius. Worked a lot with equality between the sexes, tantra, philosophy. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? He wrote a book for men and he wrote a book for women. And the book for men, I think it's called Sacred Warrior or something. It's really interesting. It's like, it explains the masculine in a very Mars in Aquarius scientific way. And he has a book for women called Dear Lover, where he does the same thing. Now, I'm not saying he's always right, but there are lots of interesting points. And I think really he can help, a lot of people are influenced by his work, No, the book for men is called The Way of the Superior Man. Now I remember. But I think, his contribution, maybe not for a lot of people, but it made sense to a lot of people who are working exactly to heal that problem, being more androgynous, being more in contact with both the feminine and the masculine, and coming back again to the masculine, the pure masculine, and getting to know again the feminine, etc., due to this little mental attitude we have to a lot of our biological urges. That's both good and bad, right? But we get a little heady from time to time, right? It's part of being able to think. But it's just using it in a good way. We also have people like Bobby Fischer and Anders Behring Breivik and Joseph Mengele on this list. And Anders Behring Breivik is this Norwegian mass killer who killed a lot of people. And I went through all 70 charts of the people he killed. It was my last farewell to these young men and women who died that July in 2011. And I was in the neighborhood. So it really affected me to see how an entire city, it was like a war thing going on. And I remember Mars was in Scorpio, and it was like, it came in like a giant and landed on the shoulders of Norway and killed, destruction, complete, mayhem. And a lot of these young, especially the younger generation that was killed, had Mars on the nodal axis. And sometimes we associate Mars on the nodal axis with premature death. And if you meet people who are born with Mars on the nodal axis, especially the south node, you might also encounter people who have that kind of post-traumatic stress disorder that they just carry through from another life, where they're highly defensive. What did you mean about that? And keep protecting themselves. And like, they're really showing us what can happen to a human being when they're exposed to war or terror or bombing or killing that came out of nowhere. Aggression, for instance, due to these thoughtless actions or to these endless wars and conflicts. And they can be high strung, very afraid to cooperate with other people. So all these themes about cooperation now with Mars on the South Node, it's like we're all going to have a little bit of that. Like we're going to be a little afraid, like, I'm not sure if I want to cooperate with that person. Because of previous experiences, thoughtless actions. Anders Behring Breivik, he said, well, I took a lot of drugs so that I wouldn't feel anything. And that's the cold side of Aquarius. If you're in a love relationship and it suddenly turns cold due to this Mars in Aquarius action, you're going to think, what happened? What happened to the libido? What happened to the love? What happened to the juice? Why the distance? Oh, so somebody crept up into their mind and started thinking. Hello. Mars, Uranus in particular for a relationship. Believe me, I'm born with Venus-Uranus square. It's very on and off. It's like hot, cold. Yes, no. Not sure. It's not always very intimate. Uranus is not always intimate. It's very distant. It can be, very distance, emotional distance between people. And that's exactly what a mass killer is trying to achieve, so that they won't feel anything when they kill somebody, right? It's not a good thing though, but it's part of human psychology, I guess, right? Truman Capote as well, mafia. Mars, Aquarius has to do with groups, it has to do with gangs. We should probably see a little group conflict coming up now. The scientists are going to hate on the astrologers again. Or the astrologer is going to hate on some other astrologer. And we always find somebody to hate on, right? Oh, I'm going to criticize this person. So there's this kind of like group versus group energy that might come up. Might be things happening in, like more mundane group situations like a kid from school and knocking up another kid, or it has to do with these group situations that we are always involved in. It might be friendships as well. Of course, Aquarius has a lot to do with friendships. It has to do with our connections to a larger group, our people. I just came from UAC and there were 1,500 astrologers going completely bananas, talking about, I have Mars here and my moon there, and then my MC is up there, and I think it's conjuncture Venus, by the way. And then, yeah, you have your South Node there. I do too. Like, what's your aspects? That's talking, we call it astrology language. It's like, I forgot to speak English. I was just talking astrology all weekend. I came home and I asked a random person on the street, where's your Venus? And I forgot where I was. I read a few of these comments after UAC because it was so fun to be home again and talk astrology with people. My people, the astrology geeks, yay! We need to find our people. And if you're in a group that is not representative of your people, maybe you will feel increasingly frustrated about this and take some independent action. Break free from it. Or if you are alone and you feel very lonely, maybe you will do the other thing around. You will actually go out and find these people. There's another couple of interesting people. They're like Linda Lovelace and Hugh Hefner. Mars has to do with voyeurism. It has to do with pornography, actually, Mars in Aquarius. Is that like, I'm satisfied just watching, So it's that coldness in relation to sexuality as well. Hugh Hefner was very instrumental in making porn available for the entire planet. He's been like the king of porn, even though it was very soft, nothing compared to what you see online today. He was still like the father of all porn in a way. I remember Playboy was the thing, right? He's the father of Playboy, for those who don't. No, I think hardly anyone doesn't know who is. But it's kind of, that was part of liberation as well. You can see Mars in Aquarius also working towards a more liberated sexual expression. Like you will see, the gay communities and everything, they will be very influenced by this Mars transit. And I think we will see a lot of that discussions around transgenderism and everything heat up a little bit, because it's gaining momentum these days, and there's a lot of people who are not feeling comfortable with being parked in one particular gender definition. They want to have a bigger freedom of expression. I have a lot of actually lesbian friends, and I see, especially one of my best friends, she's lesbian. I can see, like I kind of envy her in a way because she can carry that masculine energy without excusing herself. She doesn't, she doesn't go for, she's not interested in men, so she's not afraid to intimidate anyone. So she's just free in her masculine expression. I think it's really interesting to see, like, because I learn a lot from her. And I learn, she breaks free. I am a woman, but I'm not looking for anybody to validate that. I'm me. I follow my own energy. And once you follow your own energy, you have to be super honest. Maybe you're more masculine as a woman. Maybe you're more feminine. Who cares? Or maybe you're more feminine as a man or more masculine as a woman. So I think, the whole sexual liberation thing, that is also part of what Hugh Hefner, put into motion, has also not just been bad for Earth, because today we see so much abusive porn online, etc. And it's ruining people's brains, to be quite honest. But we also see that it's also heralded. That's also so funny. It's always the same, something good, and then it always carries something bad. It also opened up a lot of the sexual expression for people, opened up, experimenting, finding out who you are, etc. So using the mind to approach your sexuality opens up a more honest dialogue, right? You can just be more, you don't have to, freeing it up a bit. Yeah, so that's, like, I'm not saying we're gonna like suddenly gonna realize, oh, I think I'm gonna marry another gender, right? But it doesn't really matter how it expresses itself in your life, but one way or another, just freeing up your own sexual expression in one way or another. Now, of course, Mars in Uranus will be very rational about it, but understanding it, at least using the mind to understand what's going on here, huh? What do you need? There's a lot of interesting people with, I just mentioned a few, you have Michelle Obama, for instance, Maya Angelou, really nice people, huh? Queen Elizabeth II, funny, she's still alive. My God, yeah, she's a Taurus for sure. But she has some interesting transits coming in right now, so we'll see. Not that, but there will probably be some changes in the British royal family. There's already been. I mean, the youngest prince just married a black woman. It's amazing. It's just fabulous, I think. It's exactly and what we need. And it happened during that weekend where Mars just went into Aquarius. It just shifted. It just, past that point where it's going to go stationary direct again. It's amazing symbology, right? Because Mars in Capricorn is really working on the prejudices and on the what is appropriate, what can we do, what can we not do, right? Whereas Mars in Aquarius is just letting it free. Just let's be free now. Now that takes time, right? So when Mars is retrograde, when any planetary principle is retrograde, not just will Mars be extremely rational when it goes into Aquarius, and we will take be a little bit more cautious when it comes to our actions. When it's retrograding, it will be, driven up to the next level of cautiousness, because any planetary principle that's retrograde is internalized. So we sort of churn a little bit on that energy on the inner levels before we express it, if we manage to express it at all. If it's really retrograde, it's just going to be stuck in there. I have a retrograde situation in my body. I can't get the words out. Mercury is retrograde or something natally, right? Like when things are retrograde, it's really going into some extra digestive mode, or like chewing a little bit extra on something. So although Aquarius in itself is a very sudden sign, it's a little swift changes. We can be exposed to swift changes and then go in and be extremely over reflecting on them. Like we cannot seem to, it won't leave our system. So it's a kind of frustrated energy. Do I want to? Do I not want to? I don't know if I want to. Now I have to figure this one out on my own, right? It's kind of frustrating. So there's quite a bit of frustrating energy. And especially if we look at some of the transits that comes just before Mars goes retrograde, which is 25, 26 of June, we will see the Venus-Mars opposition. Now, if you pay attention to this chart, you will see that Mars is 9 degrees, Venus is 9 degrees. It's both on the nodal axis, 6 degrees. It squares Jupiter in intimacy exploring Scorpio. I want to know what intimacy is. And then you have this cold Mars is like, I want to keep away from this person and like, get me away from here. And then you have Venus in Leo goes, I just want to love and I just want to love and be loved. It's very romantic expression. Venus in Leo can be very, want to express their love and beauty in the world. And then you have Uranus squaring the whole thing. And I added in Juno, the relationship, the marriage asteroid, as we superficially call it. But it has to do a lot with equality, actually. It has to do with justice, this particular asteroid being in equal relationships. Now, the whole fixed square shows a lot of power struggles and inequalities and back and forth, and Mars is going hot and cold, and Venus is going I just want you to love me. And Jupiter in Scorpio goes, we have to go deeper, you know, we have to look into why. So it can be quite an interesting time for those of you who are in established relationships, who are really trying to figure out what is going on here. How can we get closer? We don't talk anymore. You're so far away from me. Did we grow apart? Which is a very common Venus-Uranus energy. It's like, I think we just grew apart. You're not interesting anymore. And Mars as well. I want that extra stimuli. They have to be a little bit exciting. So it's this big Venus-Mars opposition in this huge grand square that happens right before Mars goes retrograde in Aquarius. And once Mars is done with this retrogradation, guess what? Venus goes retrograde. So it's just like, oh, non-stop Mars-Venus action here with Jupiter in Scorpio saying, hello, underworld. What is really going on between us? It can be any type of relationship. Now, let's not just limit this to a sexual love relationship. It can be a friendship, a member in your family. It can be your relationship to yourself. You know, that's the ultimate relationship, right? So it's just relationship in general. And that also has to do with self-worth. It has to do with a lot of inner relationships. It has to do with your past. Mars is on the South Node. Everything that you carried up until this moment and that keeps affecting your relationships. And it has to do with your future, what you want it to be, how you would like to be in the future. What is the person that you're aiming to become? So it's a really strong creative energy that affects your relationship, your self-worth, can even affect your money situation, how you use your time and resources, independence versus codependence. So it's a very interesting time because just after the 26th of June, Mars goes retrograde, and mark this number, it's the 9 degrees. On 9 degrees, it goes retrograde. And then it starts its new synodic cycle, which happens at the opposition. That's when the new synodic cycle begins. That's the emergence, the birth of the new. And it starts at a very interesting degree. If you look at that degree, it's 4 degrees, Aquarius. And I just want to show you something, because we've had some previous cycles of Mars retrograde, and I don't want to scare anyone, but that's history. You know, history won't necessarily repeat itself. It happened, but yeah, we are changing. We're always changing. So the spiral is going upwards, even though it doesn't really always seem so. It seems sometimes like we're degenerating, but most of the time we're evolving, right? We're evolving as species. But the last time Mars, last century, Mars was retrograde in Aquarius in 1939. Now, we all remember what happened in 1939. It was the beginning of World War II, and Mars was retrograde square the nodal axis in Taurus and Scorpio. Taurus is related to, we have Uranus there now, it's related to territory, it's related to house, property, money, autonomy. A lot of countries lost their autonomy when Hitler invaded. Boink, thank you. You don't have a flag? That's my country now. And we have a lot of the same energies going on in this particular time period. Pluto is in Leo opposing Mars, retrograde in Aquarius, square the nodal axis in Taurus, Scorpio. Now, I believe that after the age of internet, a lot of our wars, you know, will be fought on the level of consciousness. We won't necessarily fight them fist to fist, man to man. If we look back on First World War, Second World War, and what we can call Third World War, the war we called the war on terrorism, we can see there's like a continuous world war going on. And in a way, it makes sense that we have world war as the globalization process continues to unfold. east versus the west, north versus south, neighbor fighting neighbor, cells fighting each other, family fighting each other, right? We don't know what group work is still, and Mars is part of that problem. Mars is the problem. It's the god of war. Now, war is sometimes necessary, right? We had to fight Hitler, right? What, should we just sit there and look at it? It's the problem that is posed in the Bhagavad Gita as well. Arjuna is sitting there, and he's the prince. Arjuna is a prince in a country, a kingdom. And he sees that his territory is being invaded, and he looks at Lord Krishna and he says, Lord, what shall I do? These people are invading my country. You have to kill them, Lord Krishna says. But I can't, Lord. These are my friends. It's my family. Well, they're invading your country. But I can't. I have too much love in my heart for them. Well, it's either them or you. And do you think they will do a good job for your people? Now, if you don't kill them, I will. And Lord Krishna turns himself to a demon, and he kills all of those who wants to invade Arjuna's country. The moral of the story is that sometimes you need to act because darkness invades. But today, who's the darkness? You know, where is the darkness? You know, we're all in it together in a very different way. Right now, as consciousness grows, the individual responsibility grows as well. The revolution has to start inside each and every individual who maintains the war, who upholds the conflicts, who fuels it with hate and prejudice. So this healing of Mars is extremely important for humanity's well-being. Sometimes, yes, there are forces that are completely out of control that needs to be staggered, like in Bhagavad Gita or in Europe in 1939. But we've had one continuous war since First World War. Just like a little break in between First and Second World War. And then we went from Second World War pretty much straight into, well, then you had the Israel thing, and then we went pretty much straight into the Cold War. And these two things, like the problem with the Middle East and the problem with the Cold War, it's still happening. It's still happening. So we're still in it in a way. It's just that we started solving it a little bit differently this time. We have proxy wars now, right? And we have one in Syria going on right now in front of our eyes. It's like a miniature world war. Russia, United States, that country, this country, that part, everybody on his own side, like fighting each other. And of course, the victims, they're innocent, right? But still, it's those same conflicts. So I don't think there's going to be like a massive global war. This is really something I really don't think there will be. Like these huge nuclear war scenarios that a lot of people are afraid will happen. I don't think it will happen. But yeah, there's still a war. And then we had a transit in 1971, and believe me, it's going to be an interesting year for those of you who are born in 1939 or in 1971. You're in the hot spot, especially if you have Mars in Aquarius, right? You're in the hot spot for these changes that are about to come. And we're going to look at some charts, if I have time, for these 1971 generation. The 26th of June, Mars thus goes retrograde. The opposition, 27th of July, Mars comes to its, oh, sorry, what happened here? Sorry. Mars starts its new cycle. It starts the emergence. In shamanic astrology, they call it the birth moment of the new Martian, of the new energy. It's like a very fresh energy of Mars that comes in. Any synodic cycle is that. Like, oh, new beginning. Oh, that felt great, finally. Although, you know, it ain't over until Mars is completely away from that those shadows degree between 9 and 28 degrees, Capricorn and Aquarius. It has to pass those degrees and from an archetypal point of view, leave Aquarius until the retrograde energy is completely over, and that won't happen until fall. Mars stays for a long time in each sign it retrogrades, up until 6 months. So it really affects an entire year, right? By this particular energy. I went back in time to see what happened last time Mars was retrograde, and I'm like, oh, and then I had a breakup, and then I had a breakup, and then I had a breakup. I'm like, I'm like Pluto in Libra generation. We have many relationships. But all my major relationships went through some major tension when Mars went retrograde. Like anything that didn't work, Mars will try to fix it. Mars will work actually to protect Venus. I can't keep my balance in this relationship. I have to end it.
It's always so interesting to see how these cycles work, you know, both for the collective as well as for us personally.
Yeah,
yes.
Very. How much time do I have?
You know, it's maybe 5-10 minutes if you want to finish up for the sake of the recording.
Yes. Yep,
Perfect.
yep.
Thank you.
Then I don't think we're going to do any charts. I'm just going to show very quickly a little bit. I'm going to do Chiron and the charts that I have.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that we get a little like an impression of what it means. And then we come back to the retrograde degree, October 8th, 2018, and look at that, Venus is retrograde already by then. So I think, you know, this is a good year for relationship astrology for sure. Definitely. If you're in a relationship, you're going to change a little bit. If you're wanting to get into a relationship, well, a lot of people say don't start a relationship on Mars retrograde. I'm like, some people associate it with meeting, you know, somebody from the past, because retrogradation in evolutionary astrology is often associated to karmic connections from past lives. Like if you meet somebody on Mercury retrograde, it's probably somebody you knew before, and there will be this instant recognition. It doesn't mean that it's always good, especially because Mars is on the south node, and it can pull you back into something that you have to re-experience again just to get that fresh start. But we are individuals. We will go through these transits in our own individual fashion. I keep repeating what a lot of evolutionary astrology says. It depends on your level of consciousness, how you react to these transits. Now, I'm just going to show you briefly a couple of people who were born with Mars retrograde on the nodal axis last time around. This is the comedian David Williams. Has a very nice little quote. I think it's all about falling in love with the person, and that is overlooked, really. I hate it when people confess or reveal their sexuality, and also things can change for people over the years. So it's about the person, but I also think it goes beyond that. You just don't fall in love with somebody's body, do you? You fall in love with somebody's soul and heart and brain. It's beautiful. Sacha Baron Cohen, he was born just after the retrogradation was done in 1971. We know him. He's the crazy guy who runs around in the little mankini. And he says, I don't know if I'm brave. Well, he certainly is beyond shame. Huh? And that's also Mars in Aquarius. You will see a lot of people will heal a lot of these shame issues that stops us in expressing who we are. It's also part of the Uranus, the Chiron in Aries. Elon Musk, he's known to a lot of people. He's coincidentally born the same day as Nikola Tesla. I'm sure he knows because he called his company Tesla. So that's an interesting one. See what happens with him and all his projects of going to Mars. And yes, I would like to die on Mars, just not on impact. It's a funny one. I want to mention Chiron in Aries very briefly because it's such an important time. This is part of the essential problem with relationship. And Chiron will go back and forth between Pisces and Aries this year. Pisces is related to that part in its shadow. It's related to that part of the collective psyche that is victimization. where we feel overwhelmed by everything, where we don't have the power or freedom to do anything about it. Now that Chiron goes into Aries, although just until September, where it will dip back again into Pisces and stay up until spring 2019, we will see that, a lot of these themes around individuality versus victimization will come up as something as, but you can do something about it. Figure out what you can do about it. Accept what D.H. Lawrence, a Chiron person above all Chiron persons, in a way, wrote about it. First and last, man is alone. He's born alone, and alone he dies. And alone he is while he lives in his deepest self. I've thought so much about that for many years, way before I actually found this quote in Melanie Reinhardt's book on Chiron, because I thought, okay, I come into this life butt naked. I'm going to leave this life butt naked. I'm not going to bring anything into the next world. But in between these lives, between these two, beginning and end, I'm growing up in a world where I'm told to wear a mask. I'm told to be somebody that I'm not. I'm born with Chiron in Aries. And part of being born with Chiron in Aries is that there can be this problem of what we call in psychosynthesis the primal wound. It's that part that exists, I think, to a greater or lesser degree in every human being. That's why we have so much compensation in terms of, I want to be somebody when I grow up. I have to be someone. It's not just survival mechanism, that thing. It's about being safe, because we believe if we're not safe, we are nothing. And we don't get love. We don't get what we don't have on the inside from others people. And that's what they call the primal wound. It's a certain emptiness around the core identity that is the self. Aries is the self. It's me, I. It's a very instinctual part of you. It's that which sees everything else, that which identifies itself as I. Now, as we grow up, let's say you grow up in a place where there's a lot of aggression around you. Let's say your mother and father fights all the time. What is the effect of that on the child? The child is being treated without empathy. There's no empathic connection between the parents fighting and the child. There can be other times, but not exactly in that moment. It is if the kid does not exist. I don't care if you're hurt. I don't care if you are hurt by my actions. So there is this need to sort of, then what happens is that the child grows up without having a sense of self. And that when there's lacking the sense of self, there's this feeling of non-existence, like as if I don't exist. There's a hole in the psyche. And that leads to a lot of addictions. It can lead to anxiety as well. It can lead to a lot of defensive mechanism. It's that right to exist, that the primal wound is that feeling that I don't exist. And it leads to a lot of dependencies. And I think with Chiron and Aries, we're going to deal with a lot of dependencies. We're going to see that we can heal a lot of dependencies in the world. Might find new therapies to heal these wounds of dependencies. And when we don't see who we are, when we don't have a firm sense of self, we will also get in trouble with self-assertion. We can also compensate by focusing too much on independence. I will not be dependent on anyone, because we associate dependence with dominance. And it can also lead to premature action, which is also part of the wounding of Chiron. I have to, I don't have a realistic approach to myself, so I don't know how much I can handle. So I probably can handle this, and then we end up thinking I couldn't handle it after all. Chiron will always show to the point in the chart where we develop some compensations due to some wounding that is humiliating for us. And Chiron Aries, is that where the willpower has been humiliated. We wanted something, but we couldn't get it, so we just stopped wanting something. because we couldn't get it after all. And, you know, that's depression in a way. Maurice always said that, you know, when Mars is thwarted, when Mars cannot get what it wants, it gets depressed. It's a brilliant, it's like, that's one of the things, you know, that I find Maurice is so good with, like these observations of the archetypes. And that is just a brilliant observation of Mars and the connection between depression and not getting what you want. But we can't always get what we want. We're not heroes. We're not gods yet. Chiron is that semi-god on the inner levels. And we see this in the mythology of Chiron as well, when it goes in between two people in a battle. It goes in between two heroes in the battle. And then the wound of the Hydra, the arrow of Hydra, pierces his left thigh, his right thigh or something. And then he's lethally wounded, but he cannot die. It's like, when I read that part of the story, I thought of those situations that I've seen sometimes, like these two people are aggressively fighting, and then a third one comes in between, thinking he could be the hero of the day to save everybody from, you know, this terrible, mindless fighting, and then he gets killed. You know, it's like, oh, I wasn't strong enough. So it's the being humiliated because you weren't strong enough. This is too much for me. Like, you have a limitation. I'm not strong enough. Chiron will heal that part of you that thinks it's not strong enough by saying, come on, focus your energies on what you can do, not what you cannot do. Take one step at a time. Chiron in Aries versus Mars retrograde. It's 2 steps forward. We're trying to reach the future here with Mars in Aquarius. We want to reach that new expression of the self. I want to be free from the masquerade and free from all this, you know, I want to have freedom. I want to reach the future potential of myself. That is what Mars in Aquarius is all about. And then retrograde is like, oh, we're 1 step forward and 2, you know, like, oh, 2 steps forward and 1 step back. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. A little back and forth, huh? Could be a little frustrating this summer, especially if you I want it now. But the will to be who you are has a consequence. If you are truly honest with yourself, you will probably lose a few friends. You won't bother to hang out with these people. You will maybe change your job, maybe move to another place within the capacity of your resources, of course, but you will try to change your life to fit a more authentic expression. And now Chiron will be in Aries for a very long time. It's nothing compared to Mars in Aquarius, but this is just the beginning of the Chiron in Aries period. It's the first little dip into Aries. So it's very symbolically interesting that this happens now in Aquarius, because we have this world problem with Mars. We keep hurting each other through mindless speech, through mindless, thoughtless action, being too egoistical and too reactive and too quick. And Chiron in Aries is exactly all these problems with Mars, these, you know, premature action problems that happens, and the wound that came after that. So now with Mars in Aquarius, we think about what happened in the past, and we try to create something new in the future. The healthy masculine principle I associate with Shiva, and Shiva says, it's enough now. Stop this before it goes too far. That's my little interpretation of the entire, it's a nice little wrap up of the entire period that we now go into. And I hope it was less scary and more inspiring, because that's what I think astrology should be. You always look on the bright side of every aspect. Try to find the creative potential with everything. And then you can live well and safe with astrology. And with that, I wish you a marvelous summer. I hope you find the freedom of being who you really are.
Thank you so much, Sol. That was wonderful. And just to reiterate, for those of you that are listening to the recording, thank you all who had attended earlier. We did have some technical glitches, and Sol was kind enough to re-record this whole presentation. For those of you that are listening to it the first time, you missed out some lively discussion on the GoToMeeting from some wonderful astrologers. William Sebrings, I'd like to give him a shout out for acknowledging Kate's chart. So that was lovely. Again, Sol, thank you so much for this lovely presentation. And one more time, can you give us your contact information? It will be on the page that I will be sending out and emailing out to all of the OPA members. But for those that are just listening to the recording, perhaps it would be nice to just reiterate your contact information again.
Yes, it's my contact information. You find me on Facebook on Jonassen or Polaris Astrology. You also find me on Instagram under Polaris Astrology. But my website is Sol, how do you call that little thing between the letters? Solvit.com. I have this, I'm about changes. I'm going to change that name because my last name is written WITH. It's a real name. It doesn't mean with, but it's a real name. It's my last name, Solvit. That's how you write it. .com. So that's where you find me. But it's written
wonderful.
with.
And again, I will have that on the
Yeah,
email that goes out to all the members, so they'll have that written down as well. So again, thank you so much, Sol, for the lovely presentation. And I know
thank you
that
for your patience,
everyone will have so much information to take back, and they'll be able to re-listen to this recording, and it will be a great benefit to them. So thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Same to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Can I just leave?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.